And we're back with On the Record with Kevin and Tiffany here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, home of conservative talk radio, with Anthony Collier being our special guest. All right, Tiffany, what do we have here?
Tell our audience what your next job is.
So I'll be the director of criminal justice for the National Urban League. I'll be moving to New York City to work on national policy.
Wow.
And what does that entail, my friend? That's broad.
And he's 30 years old.
Yeah, he is a young man. He has that baby face. Keep that baby face. It's gonna come in handy for you. So explain about what that means when on the policy side there. Why is that
important?
You're
going from a conservative state and from being in this position that you've been in here now to essentially the other side, where you're going to actually get to do some justice reform. So how did you handle the desire to do exactly what you're about to go and do with working in the setting that you're in?
Sure. So the job entails handling the criminal justice reform portfolio for the National Urban League and all of our affiliates nationwide. So we'll be working to get laws passed, ordinances passed, and also to address like police shootings or that are plaguing the Black community. And a part of the reason why I believe I was hired is because I came from such a conservative state. And so like getting criminal justice reform in Texas is like running with ankle weights on, because it's so hard to get it done here that if you can get it done here, the rest of the nation takes notice. Like, for example, that First Step Act that Donald Trump signed into law during his first term, that was criminal justice reform we passed in Texas. And they said, oh, if they can get that done in Texas, we could probably get this done nationwide. And they were correct. And so
why is that bill important? Well, describe that bill so that people know the details of that, and describe why it's important.
So the Second Look Act is dealing with sentencing reform. So because of systemic racism, there was a time where if you had, crack, or if you had cocaine, it would be you would get 50 times more of a penalty for selling crack or for possessing crack than you would for cocaine, even though they're essentially the same drug. One is just a cheaper version, so it's more accessible to poor people. And so with the Second Look Act, they would go back on like nonviolent drug offenses. That was kind of the catalyst for it, but it doesn't just apply to crack. It can apply to marijuana.
So let me describe that a little bit. But I don't mean to cut you off, so that people here on the radio station won't miss this point. We're talking 3 ounces, because I was of the age as a young man, I could have been wrapped up in some situations that I shouldn't have been in. We're talking 3 ounces of crack cocaine, which is essentially 3 sweet and lows, versus you could have a whole brick of cocaine, and that's a whole kilo of drugs, right? So for a kilo, you got less time for a kilo than you did for 3 ounces of cocaine. That's what we're talking about. Of crack, I'm sorry, 3 ounces of crack cocaine, right? So, and I had friends who got caught up in that and got years for that, whereas I knew of a couple of non-melanated people who had kilos and got less time. That's why that's important, because the distribution isn't fair. It is not a fair thing. And so that's a huge accomplishment on that pass. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Anthony.
Oh yeah, no problem. And but more recently, in the past legislative session, when I was in law school, I was working for Senator Boris Miles, and he's on the Criminal Justice Committee, and that's kind of how I fostered a relationship with Senator Whitmire. But we got a ban on chokeholds passed and duty to intervene legislation passed, and this was during the 2021 legislative session. And those were 2 of the priorities of the Urban League, to get that type of legislation passed nationwide. And so I think they took note of that, and they said, wow, if you were able to, because I helped write that legislation, of course, working under the leadership and the tutelage of Senator Boris Miles, and help, get that passed across the finish line. And so they look at it as, if you can get these type of historic legislation passed in Texas, we believe that together we can get a lot of good work done nationwide.
Yeah. I adore Senator Miles. I think the hand of God is on Senator Miles. because he has done some great things for kidney patients. In my day job, I'm the president and CEO of the Texas Kidney Foundation. And so Senator Miles has just been the first place that we have seen kidney legislation go through. And it was the same thing. Like, once people saw us move legislation in Texas for kidney patients, then when we went federally to do the immunosuppressant act, then we were able to pass the immunosuppressant bill in the 116th Congress in 2020, after we had tried to push that through year after year after year after year. But it was once they started seeing the needle moving in Texas, then people were like, oh, well, we probably can do that now.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask this question, right? Because this is one of my pet peeves, right? I always say you can complain, bellyache as much as you want, right? But until you get there and make it a policy, all it is just political intrigue, right? We can get on, we can go anywhere, say whatever, right? It's just air. It is just air until you actually get in the halls where policies are made. Right. You're just talking until you can refer to, bill, blah, 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 with those numbers behind it. Right. Or it's in the Senate, it's in the House. Until you can talk about that. Right. And move in that direction. Everything else is just words and talk.
Well, until it makes it to the government.
Yeah, it's got to,
or just makes it to his desk and is accepted.
But that's the part that we, and one of the things, Anthony, I don't know your political affiliation. I just know that when I saw your actions, I was like, this guy, this young man, and I don't mean to say that in an offensive way, but this young man is moving in the right direction, because in order for us to see change for our people, it's got to be in the policies. Right. And that's the one thing that I found very fascinating about your whole thing, is that it's policy. And I found talk about why that's important.
And I found fascinating that he was that he's worked with the conservatives, and he's working with the left and the right. He worked with the left and the right, because there has to be representation in both on both the left and the right, in order for us to actually see the change we want to see.
Yeah, we always refer to that, Anthony, as our politics. We always say our politics is B1. What's your party? B1, right? In Texas, we just happen to be the Republican Party. But at the end of the day, our politics is black first, and the issues that impact black people, because we know that if we change those, right, for black people, for our people, it's going to change it for everyone. But talk about the importance of policy and why, at the end of the day, it's policy that matters.
Sure. So I believe, and this is something that I subscribe to since my political awakening, which was, like I said, as a teenager, reading Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey. I believe that as black people, we have no permanent allies, only permanent interests. So I'm political party, affiliation, organization that's going to help make lives better, improve the quality of life for black people. And so in Texas, of course, since the Republican Party controls the House, the Senate, governor's mansion, and the lieutenant governor's office, to get any legislation passed in Texas, you have to be able to work across the aisle. And I thank God that he's blessed me with favor, not only with Democrats, but also with Republicans and with Libertarians. And I want to shout out Representative Matt Krause. He was a Republican in the House. He ran for Attorney General, but he was unsuccessful. But I believe he's a Libertarian, but he is one of our strongest and best allies in the House on criminal justice reform as a Republican, as a white Christian conservative. And so, well, anybody, as long as they're on the right side of the issues when it comes to our people.
Yes.
And that is the exact right attitude to have, because if we should always be looking for allies. If somebody thinks that you will align with them no matter what, and they can treat you any kind of way, you will always be a 3 a.m. booty call, which is what we are in many cases, because they know that we're going to vote with them, or no matter what, no matter how you talk to us, we're going to stick with you. No. My neighborhood's still deteriorating. My school is not getting what it should be getting.
Yeah. And so that's why I just love that last statement, right? I'm just thinking of the chapter that on the X book, right, is where we have to be focused on the causes that impact our people. And we see that in criminal justice, it's health for us, and it's economics, and it's schooling. For us, those are really the 4 issues more important. And from our view, and you can order them different ways, right? And we work with all people on that, is that we have to be willing to move according to the issue, right? And we can't simply gerrymander ourselves with one group of people, right? And one of the things that we run into often is that people will say, well, overall, the Republican Party is full of a bunch of racists and they have racist views. And to that, I have to say, that's correct. You're right. That's true. But I still have to go in and I still have to encounter and interact with the party. And there are things about the party that I like. And here in Texas, and like you said, if you want anything passed or moved, you've got to be involved with the party. You've got to go in and you've got to be involved at the policy level and not the political intrigue level there. So I always say people should vote in the primary, especially here in the state of Texas. There's only 3 million Black people here. And for us, the potency of our vote is always going to be in the primaries, right? That's where I believe that we should always turn out the vote, is in the primaries. But
well, I disagree with you on the.
Go ahead. We do disagree, and you're allowed to, Mrs. Smith.
What I think is that there are a vocal group of racists that people actually hear more of, but I don't think that most people are racist. I think
that'd be accurate. Yeah.
I think most people are living their lives and working and doing the same things that we're all doing. They're not willfully trying to do anything to anybody else, but you've got a vocal minority that is really trying to take hold. And we either lay down and let that happen, or we stand up for what's right.
Yeah.
And
I think this is why we need more people like Anthony and like ourselves involved in the process.
You cannot come jumping up into a party and all you're trying to do is self-promote and make, be the one and only. So,
Anthony, I'm going to jump back over to X, because we're quoting, you're quoting one of my favorite books, and then with Marcus Garvey. I'm sorry, we went here, right? I didn't plan this.
What is this? Our child? Did somebody steal this boy away from us?
So when you read X's book, because I think I read X's book like in high school. No, it was college, my first year of college, right? So when you go through and you read that book, what sense of, because it's completely different than what they tell you about. They tell you that, oh, it's about hate, it's about that. It's really not. It's about self-discovery. It's how did X become who he was at the time? It's a book of self-discovery. So when you read that book and you're walking in and you're in the halls of power and policy, what is the impact? What does that leave you with? What part of that do you kind of bring to the table?
Yeah, I think that Malcolm X taught me a lot of things. One of the most critical things I learned from Malcolm X is, and it's in line with the Bible as well. The Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when he's old, they won't depart. And if you remember, as a child, Malcolm X's father would take him to those Marcus Garvey meetings, those Garvey meetings, was an avid Garveyite. And though Malcolm X did get older and stray and lose his way, when he was reintroduced to that knowledge of self in prison, he was more open and susceptible to it because he had already, that seed had already been planted inside of him. And so it just goes, it goes to show the importance of educating our youth and teaching them knowledge of self at a young age, so that when they're older and they're reintroduced, they'll be more likely to grasp to it. And also, I saw myself in him a lot too, because, you know, him spending 8 years in prison. My dad has been incarcerated. My dad and my stepdad were both incarcerated when I was in high school, and I got sent to alternative school twice. I was heading down that same path. All my dad's side have been incarcerated. Most of my cousins, my family is actually from Houston. Part of the reason why my mom moved me to Maynard, where I grew up out in the country, is to hopefully, you know, remove me from that so I can have a chance that my dad and my uncles and my cousins didn't have. And the fact that this brother, you know, went to prison, spent 8 years in prison, and with knowledge and with reading books and with self-discipline was able to turn his life around and come out and become one of the greatest leaders and orators the world has ever known, and without a college degree be able to debate and defeat, you know, professors at Harvard and Columbia and UC Berkeley. It's just a reminder too of how powerful our people are, and how it's important for us to tap into that unmet potential, and how some of the most brilliant brothers and sisters that we have are locked up in prison, which is also why I'm a huge advocate of getting AC units in these prisons. Like, people are baking to death. When it's 105 degrees out here, it's like 120, 130 in these prisons, because they're made out of metal and they're made out of stone. And it's like, a lot of the times people, they dehumanize them and they say, oh, they shouldn't have made a mistake. But that's somebody's father, that's somebody's daughter. There's a Malcolm X in that prison. You know, these people still have value, even though they made a mistake. And some of them, let's be honest, some of them are probably innocent as well. And so we have to get more humane conditions in the prison. So yeah, it just taught me about the importance of knowledge of self, about training up our children at a young age, teaching them knowledge of self, and to have humanity, and about redemption, how people should be able to have another chance. If you make a mistake, you should be able to get another chance. Your worst moments don't define you.
And you've been listening to On the Record with Kevin and Tiffany on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, home of conservative talk radio.